Once upon a time, in a quaint little village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, lived a sweet little girl named Red Riding Hood. She earned her name from the beautiful red hooded cloak her grandmother had made for her. Red Riding Hood was dearly loved by everyone in the village, especially her grandmother, who lived on the outskirts of the forest. One sunny morning, Red Riding Hood's mother called her into the kitchen. "Little Red," she said with a smile, "would you be a dear and take this basket of goodies to your grandmother? She's feeling a bit under the weather, and these treats will surely cheer her up." Red Riding Hood beamed with excitement. "Of course, Mother. I'll go right away," she replied, taking the basket filled with freshly baked bread, sweet fruits, and a jar of honey. With her red hood pulled snugly over her golden locks, Red Riding Hood set off on the familiar path through the forest to her grandmother's cottage. The birds chirped merrily, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. As Red Riding Hood ventured deeper into the woods, she hummed a cheerful tune, unaware of the lurking danger nearby. Suddenly, a sly voice called out to her from behind a bush. "Good morning, little girl," said the voice. Red Riding Hood turned to see a cunning wolf peering out from the foliage, his eyes gleaming with hunger. "Hello, Mr. Wolf," she greeted politely, though a hint of caution tinged her voice. "Where are you off to in such a hurry, my dear?" the wolf inquired, his voice dripping with false kindness. "I'm taking these goodies to my grandmother's house," Red Riding Hood replied, clutching the basket tightly. "Ah, how thoughtful of you," the wolf said with a toothy grin. "And where does your dear grandmother live?" "Oh, just a little farther into the forest," Red Riding Hood answered innocently, pointing in the direction of the cottage. The wolf's eyes narrowed with cunning. "Well then, why don't you take the scenic route through the meadow over there? It's much quicker, and you'll surely arrive in no time." Red Riding Hood hesitated, unsure of the wolf's intentions. But he seemed so friendly, and the meadow did look like a lovely shortcut. Without a second thought, she thanked the wolf and skipped off in the direction he had pointed. Meanwhile, the wolf's stomach growled with anticipation as he hatched a wicked plan. He dashed through the forest, taking a different path to reach the grandmother's cottage before Red Riding Hood. Arriving at the cottage, the wolf knocked gently on the door. "Who's there?" came a feeble voice from inside. "It's me, your granddaughter, Red Riding Hood," the wolf replied, trying to mimic the girl's voice as best he could. The unsuspecting grandmother opened the door, only to be met with the sharp teeth and menacing grin of the wolf. Before she could scream, the wolf pounced, devouring her in one swift gulp. With a satisfied burp, he quickly donned the grandmother's nightcap and settled into her bed, waiting for his next victim. Back in the meadow, Red Riding Hood skipped along happily, enjoying the warm sun and the sweet scent of wildflowers. But as she approached her grandmother's cottage, a strange feeling crept over her. Something didn't feel quite right. Pushing open the cottage door, Red Riding Hood called out, "Grandmother, it's me, Red Riding Hood. I've brought you some goodies." To her surprise, the room was dimly lit, and her grandmother lay tucked in bed, with the covers pulled up to her chin. "My, what big ears you have, Grandmother," Red Riding Hood remarked, noticing the wolf's oversized ears protruding from beneath the nightcap. "All the better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf, trying to disguise his deep voice as the grandmother's. "And what big eyes you have, Grandmother," Red Riding Hood continued, eyeing the wolf's sharp, predatory gaze. "All the better to see you with, my dear," the wolf replied, licking his lips in anticipation. Finally realizing the truth, Red Riding Hood gasped in horror as she backed away from the bed. Without a moment to lose, she darted out of the cottage, fleeing into the forest as fast as her legs could carry her. Hearing the commotion, a woodsman working nearby rushed to Red Riding Hood's aid. Together, they burst into the cottage and confronted the wolf, who was still licking his chops in the bed. With a mighty swing of his axe, the woodsman dispatched the wicked wolf, freeing Red Riding Hood's grandmother from his belly. The two embraced, grateful to be alive and safe once more. From that day on, Red Riding Hood learned to be more cautious in the forest, always mindful of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. And though she continued to wear her beloved red hood, she never strayed from the path or trusted strangers so easily again. And so, with courage and wisdom, Little Red Riding Hood lived happily ever after, sharing her cautionary tale with children far and wide, reminding them to beware of wolves in sheep's clothing.